Welcome to Best Ball Study Hall. I am your host, Jeremiah Retzlaff. You can find me on X at Coach Retzlaff1. It's a nice little Saturday here. Maybe we'll go to Home Depot, Bed Bath & Beyond. I don't know if we'll have enough time, but we do have enough time today for some best ball drafts. About 2 episodes ago with my co-host, Ed DeLauder on Best Ball Night School, we did an Eliminator draft live together, and there's just a little bit of different strategy that goes along there. You want to make sure each week 2 people get clipped per draft room, and then it's just different groupings each week, and all but 2 people get pulled out, and then you have to survive. There's eliminations every single week. You have to reach the week 8 cut line, so there's a little bit of a different strategy that goes along with this tournament setting in the Eliminator. The Eliminator, of course, you want to win the grand prize. However, strategically, from a plus EV, from what you're investing and what you're getting back to garner return, you want to make it to week 8 cut line. So there's some strategy of trying to at least hit the base level so you start getting your money back, and then of course profit the further you advance. Something to consider is bye weeks. You don't want to necessarily overstack as well. You want to have positional allocation spread out. So I'm more inclined to go 3 quarterbacks, 3 tight ends, and go a little bit even at my receiver position. I really do like a 3-6-6-3 build. So right now, how I've started it off, I have Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr. Now there's word about Davante Adams getting traded. So I don't know, into the Jets, and I don't know how we'll feel about Garrett Wilson. Will there be a dip with Garrett Wilson? Is there going to be a dip with Garrett Wilson up until any news does or doesn't happen regarding Davante Adams? Could this cool the market and present us a buying opportunity where maybe Garrett Wilson falls into the second round of these underdog drafts? Now, of course, you run the risk of the Jets and the Raiders clicking the button, processing a trade for Davante Adams, and then you're sitting there holding some Garrett Wilson bags, because we know Aaron Rodgers loves to zero in, hyper target his main area focus, is alphas on his offense. Granted, I feel like Garrett Wilson would still get fed, but would totally change the scope of the Jets offense with Davante Adams in there, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson. Those would be the triumvirate of weapons to get targeted. But we do not, as fantasy gamers, as we are selecting Garrett Wilson in the back end of round 1, we do not want Davante Adams to join the Jets. Now, on the other hand, those of us who are drafting Brock Bowers would love to see Davante Adams go to the New York Jets. So that'll be something very fun, some buzz in this hot best ball summer to monitor. So paired with Garrett Wilson, I have Marvin Harrison Jr. Both Wilson and Harrison have different bye weeks. And now I call this a Kelce layup, a Chiefs layup. I have Travis Kelce. I get the advantage at the onesie position. And then I am simply going to stack with Patrick Mahomes. Easy, simple, nice. Mahomes, Kelce, I'm set and forget, especially when I'm trying to each week make a certain cut line where I don't want to be one of the bottom 2 teams per my grouping each week. Sign me up for some Mahomes and Kelce. And then I really love Garrett Wilson this year, sans a Davante Adams trade. And then, of course, Marvin Harrison Jr., we are bullish on him. And he's been being drafted at the turn post-NFL draft for a very long time. Let's see what's next. The slow puppy, I call this a Barkley dip. It looks like Ben Gretch is in this draft right next to me. So hello there to you, Gretch. My team so far, I'm in round 3. I have Amon-Ra St. Brown, started off with pick 5. And then Jaylen Waddle, I went with pick 20. I spoke on Best Ball Night School how I had about a 10% exposure to Jaylen Waddle. I want to get Jaylen Waddle numbers up. The only way to do that is to make more clicks. So I have Amon-Ra and Jaylen Waddle, and I wanted to go into a direction where I would be selecting wide receiver here, or consider King Henry, Derrick Henry. I want to get my Derrick Henry numbers up. But sometimes when you're on a path, on a task, something falls in front of you. Anybody who's ever worked in the kitchen knows that different interruptions can't come up on your path. It's not all linear to where you're going. So here is Saquon Barkley, ADP of 20. I am at pick 29. Certainly, with a sharp gamer behind me, I can see that Saquon Barkley will certainly get snatched up either the very next pick or within the next 2 picks because that's such good value. So we're on 9 picks past ADP for Saquon Barkley. Even though I'm not in on Saquon Barkley, I need to have the humility to click on some Saquon Barkley. So here in round 3, 9 picks past ADP. Hopefully I'll get a different combinatorial output for my team with Saquon Barkley here in the mid-third round. So I have Amon-Ra, Jaylen Waddle, and now Saquon Barkley. All right, let's go to the Chihuahua. This is my team. It's a 1-4-5-2 build. I'll read it off. It is Jalen Hurts at quarterback. My running backs, Ken Walker, Brian Robinson Jr., Blake Corum, Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott provides some of that correlation to that Eagles-Cowboys game. My wide receivers, we love us some A.J. Brown. Got to get those numbers up. Chris Olave, Chris Godwin, Jamison Williams, and then Ricky Pearsall. And then, of course, we're talking about maybe the Brandon Ayuk trade. I don't think the Brandon Ayuk trade will happen, but we've certainly been wrong before. I've certainly been wrong before. We will keep an eye on that. Sam Laporta, Brock Bowers. I am bully at tight end, but I don't mind the bullying with the price point of Brock Bowers. Now, if Davante Adams gets traded to what we spoke to before, I'm really loving this team because Brock Bowers' ADP is going to shoot way up. So the structure of my team, I'm a 1-4-5-2 build. I'm set and forget at tight end. I don't feel pressure to go towards quarterback with my anchor, my stud quarterback in Jalen Hurts. I like my running back room just so-so. And I really like my wide receiver, the front end, A.J. Brown, Olave, Chris Godwin. What I would like to pull off here, since I'm at pick 154 to 159, I want to go for some Chuba Hubbard. And then off the backboard, I want to, on the other side, go and get Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm going to click Chuba Hubbard here. And just a thought on Wan'Dale Robinson. We had Bradley Stalder on Best Ball Night School this last week. And Bradley Stalder talked about he thinks that Wan'Dale Robinson is 4 rounds too cheap. So if I can get Wan'Dale Robinson in a few picks here in round 14, I'll be very pleased with that. And if Bradley Stalder's prediction that it's 4 rounds too cheap, we're talking about 10th round, let me scoop up that value with Wan'Dale Robinson. So again, to review my team, I've got Jalen Hurts, my 2 tight ends, Laporta, Bowers. We're going to keep an eye every time we click on Bowers now, every time we click on Garrett Wilson, we have to be thinking of that Davante Adams. And then, of course, when you're clicking Davante Adams, you're thinking of that potential trade to the Jets. You have to think about how it affects all of the players. And then the running backs, Ken Walker, Brian Robinson Jr., Blake Corum. Between Walker and Robinson, I feel confident in them being good advanced rate players and duration players. Blake Corum is going to need some sort of an injury. It's not a layup that Blake Corum is the guy in this offense. We have to respect, as much as we want Kyron Williams to be out of the way and we want the contingent value glory of Blake Corum, you have to be realistic with your expectations. So I am drafting plenty of Blake Corum, but every time I click, I'm not disillusioned that it's just going to be the Blake Corum show and that they'll necessarily, even from the jump, be a significant portion of Blake Corum to start the season. Blake Corum is not an advanced rate player. He is somebody who can get me in the back half of the season. And then, of course, hopefully ascend towards the end of the year. It's an attrition position at running back. I hope I can get that with Blake Corum. Ezekiel Elliott, I see touchdown equity in the green zone, in the red zone. Nothing necessarily more. Granted, Ezekiel Elliott proved to be a bit of a weapon in the pass game last year. So maybe we'll see that flash with the Cowboys. But my expectations are parked right around the ADP where I've been getting Ezekiel Elliott. He goes at pick 130 overall. I've stated my bullish Chuba Hubbard case. To leave Chuba Hubbard at this point in the draft, I would probably opt towards Hubbard and then maybe Tyler Algier. I'm trying to mix up my numbers, but I really love Chuba Hubbard as an advanced rate player. And then my receivers with Brown, Olave, Godwin, I feel very confident with those 3, but I am in a position where my 4th and 5th receivers with Jamison Williams, Ricky Pearsall, I'm not so confident in them. They're volatile. They have that nice Week 17 matchup. That could be a differentiated look to that Detroit Lions and 49ers game. but I do really hope at pick 159 that Wan'Dale Robinson does fall to me. Let's go to the slow puppy, and I call it Wilson Fear. So I'm in the first round. McCaffrey is gone. Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, that's 1, 2, 3. Justin Jefferson goes pick 4. Jamar Chase, 5. Jefferson and Chase, 4 and 5. Pretty wild that they're not at that 1 and 2. Things change over the course of each season. And we're seeing Amon-Ra St. Brown, who in this draft goes 6. Amon-Ra has been a lot of times, I've been clicking even so, Amon-Ra before Justin Jefferson. Puka Nacua goes 7. Bijan Robinson, 8. Breece Hall, 9. Bijan and Breece, they're usually clumped together. There is A.J. Brown. And then here, I've titled it Wilson Fear. What I want to do here, and this is not like some huge momentous shift. If I were to get Garrett Wilson at pick 14, I wouldn't do cartwheels, but it's something that I just want to see. I want to see if Garrett Wilson will fall to me at 14. So right now, I am going to click Marvin Harrison Jr., and I'm at the 11-14 wraparound. So we'll see if the 12-13 person goes Garrett Wilson, or if they opt for maybe Gibbs, Drake London, Jonathan Taylor, Gibbs, Chris Olave, something different that isn't Garrett Wilson, unless Garrett Wilson fall to me. I will certainly scoop up Garrett Wilson. I'm not living on Fear Street yet, but sometimes you have to place and leave a player in a draft to see if they'll fall further back. Let's go to the puppy 2. These have been out there for quite some time, and they lag. These slow drafts can lag behind the market of what's availed. Right now, you go to click on your drafts. The puppy 2 has been closed for quite some time. I have a 2-5-7-3 build. I'm in the final round. I have Patrick Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence as my quarterbacks. Go down to tight end. Brock Bowers, there he is again. I'm bullish on Brock Bowers. I've been trying to get my numbers up on Brock Bowers. I did a little audit for 10% exposures, and Brock Bowers is about 10% in my post-NFL draft, underdog drafts. Now, I thought to myself, I've been clicking a ton of Bowers, a ton of Malik Neighbors, a ton of Jaylen Waddle. Why are they parked at 10%? Well, I had about 25 Superflex drafts that they get parted separately in the exposure tab. So I've noticed that my exposure on Brock Bowers in Superflex, those drafts, it's 47%. So I have more Brock Bowers than I realize, and I want to keep it that way. So anytime, it's so funny between my Garrett Wilson exposure, my Brock Bowers exposure. On one end, we don't want Garrett Wilson to get burned by Davante Adams because there would be a cooling and an ADP dip there. But I am so excited for the Brock Bowers exposure where he would jump big time in the event that Davante Adams is out. Then we would start narratives of the only show in town is Brock Bowers. Of course, Jacoby Myers would benefit. There are other weapons there that would matriculate up. Zamir White would get more of a bullish drumbeat as well. So it's a ripple effect on all the players. Brock Bowers, for my pre-NFL draft exposure, I have 90 drafts there. I believe off the top of my head, it was 13% exposure for Brock Bowers. So I'm excited. So again, to review, Patrick Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence, my tight ends, Brock Bowers, Luke Musgrave, Jonnu Smith. I love me some Jonnu Smith. I love the 3 tight ends that I have here. I've been trying to also click on some more Luke Musgrave. Going to my running backs, I have Christian McCaffrey, Devon Achane, Gus Edwards, Chuba Hubbard, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is only there because of Patrick Mahomes. Christian McCaffrey has to be my anchor. I invest a 101 in Christian McCaffrey. And I know if people have been listening to me, they know that I have drafted less Christian McCaffrey than the field, whereas everyone gets a 101, or a majority of players, not everyone. A lot of players get the 101 and they just set and forget. They go Christian McCaffrey. I've been trying to increase my CeeDee Lamb exposure because Lamb really is at that 2 spot, sometimes 3. But if I want to get my Lamb numbers up higher, my bet on Lamb versus CMC, when I get the 101, I am clicking some CeeDee Lamb just to get those numbers there. Devon Achane, I'm just sitting here thinking, wow, I could have the 2 best running backs in the field on this team. And then as my third running back, here's another guy that I'm trying to get more exposure to, Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards, I think, is just going to be a touchdown machine. We've heard about, oh, Gus Edwards out, he's hurt. But with his injury, the news has been Gus Edwards will be ready for training camp, will be ready for the season. I trust the veteran guile for Gus Edwards versus, say, a rookie player who is missing some time, some key reps in OTAs and into training camp. The veterans can just catch up real quick. They can miss multiple practices throughout a week and be good to go on Sunday. Chuba Hubbard, there he is again. One of my highest exposure players, one of my highest exposure running backs. I think I have him between 20 and 25%. So those are my running backs. I love them. I enjoy the 5 that I have. And because I have McCaffrey, Achane, I don't feel like I need to go and get a 6th running back here. Again, it's a 2-5-7-3 build. I am going to add a receiver to this 7 receiver room. Here is Deebo Samuel. Yeah, I got him at the 24th pick. Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice I have stacked with Patrick Mahomes. So I am thrilled about that. With Trevor Lawrence, I have Brian Thomas Jr. We're hearing bullish rave reports about Brian Thomas, and there's some really sharp dynasty gamers who are in on Brian Thomas Jr. I love getting him as my 4th wide receiver. Sometimes they can get Brian Thomas Jr. as my 5th receiver. There is Rashid Shaheed on this roster. Hey, Scott Fishbowl, I drafted Rashid Shaheed as well. Those return numbers are going to be appealing in the Scott Fishbowl setting. Ricky Pearsall, love having Ricky Pearsall, just a different exposure player on this San Francisco 49ers team. I don't think Brandon Ayuk gets traded, but I like getting pieces of great offenses. Ricky Pearsall actually experienced about a 4-pick ADP slide from late June to just a few days ago in July here. And I think the idea being if there's no trade, nowhere that Brandon Ayuk may be going, people are settling into the fact that Ricky Pearsall shouldn't be going so much higher than where he is right now. So there could be some dip there. To me, the player you want to keep an eye on in San Francisco, and this may sound obvious, but after I say it, it is George Kittle. George Kittle is the guy you want in the event that Brandon Ayuk is gone. George Kittle will feast. So then my last receiver here is Demarcus Robinson. And now I'm going to click. I have Tyler Boyd in the queue. Tyler Boyd is just going to go on the opposite of my Jaguars build that I have with Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. Let's go to a slow puppy. Get King Henry numbers up is how I've titled this. And then we'll be on our way. I have Puka Nacua, Chris Olave. I went Puka at 10, Chris Olave at 15. You see when people are trying to differentiate, they're clicking on some Nico Collins. They're clicking on some Chris Olave. You have to do something different at the 1-2 turn. You have to do something different at the wraparound picks. I love clicking on some Chris Olave. I am in on Chris Olave being a top 12 wide receiver this year. So you have to press a button. You have to click. My one curiosity to drafters out there would be, who do you have higher, Chris Olave or Jaylen Waddle? I think you can make excellent cases for both players. So I have Puka Nacua, Chris Olave. I've simply put this titled, Get Your King Henry Numbers Up. I have King Henry on the board at the top of my queue. If you don't click him, you'll miss him. So there I am, clicking Derrick Henry to add to this team. An earlier draft where I talked about Saquon Barkley falling, Derrick Henry was still on the board. So I had to take Saquon Barkley there. Had I not taken Saquon Barkley, I would have gone with Derrick Henry. So different iterations have happened in these drafts today. Mainly, we talked a lot about Brock Bowers and Garrett Wilson. That seems to be the thread of continuity in these drafts. It's such a pivotal point because you have an elite wide receiver in Garrett Wilson being affected by the potential Davante Adams trade to the Jets. And then you have a bedrock, stalwart, top tier, elite tight end, Brock Bowers in the making that we are excited about, that is going in the 90s, in the hundreds for picks. And we could get Brock Bowers to soar way up. So it's very interesting, the dichotomy of just keep an eye on Davante Adams. In the event that Davante Adams gets traded to the Jets, you will see a Garrett Wilson dip and you will see Brock Bowers soar up boards. So I've been Jeremiah Retzlaff. You can find me on X at Coach Retzlaff1. Like and subscribe the show. Please leave a rating and a review for me. It really helps and it goes a long way. I will see you next week. Thank you.